I'm going to give a short talk saying the humility of Joseph, an interesting point. And after that, if anyone has any comments to make, any questions, we'll hear them, and then we'll call it a day. Okay, we've covered a lot of territory, so that's what we'll do now. So we know the story of Joseph. Joseph was the son of Rachel. Joseph was the son of Rachel. So his brothers were jealous of him. Because of that, they sold him into Egypt as a slave. And that caused a whole lot of developments. Also caused the Israelites to come down to Egypt in the first place. So it's worth knowing exactly what happened, which we can do so from the Hebrew text, which is worth bearing in mind. Explanation, we're relying somewhat on Rabbi Yaakov Svi Mecklenburg, Rabbi Yaakov Svi Mecklenburg, 1785 to 1835, 200 years ago, say. He lived in Germany. In his work Aktava Kabbalah, the scripture and tradition, he speaks of this and he analyzes the Hebrew text. So we know that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were the forefathers of the Israelite nation. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Isaac and Jacob were the forefathers of the Israelite nation. Jacob was renamed Israel. Jacob had 4 wives. 2 of his wives were sisters. That is Rachel and Leah, Rachel and Leah. And 2 of his wives were handmaidens of the sisters. Leah had the handmaiden Zilpah, and Rachel had the handmaiden Bilhah. And these 2 handmaidens also became the wives of Jacob. And Leah was the elder of the sisters, and the first one that Jacob married. So she was considered the senior wife. Leah was the senior wife. Leah bore 6 sons. Well, Rachel, Bilhah, and Zilpah, each one of them had only 2 sons each. That made for a total of 12 sons. Okay, Leah 6 sons, the other 3 wives, 2 sons each. 12, 6 and 6 are 12. Joseph and Benjamin were the sons of Rachel, the sister of Leah. Joseph was a favorite son. Joseph had dreams, he dreamt. He had dreams, and these dreams were understood to mean that Joseph would become a monarch and rule over the rest of their family. Jacob presented Joseph with a coat of many colors, it says, a coat of many colors. In Hebrew, cotonut parsim. Cotonut parsim in Hebrew actually meant a tartan-type cloak, of tartan-type designs, according to the commentators. And it indicated rank and royalty. We find the same expression, cotonut parsim, used in the case of Tamar. Tamar, the daughter of David, King David. Tamar, the daughter of King David, was raped by her half-brother Amnon. And after she was raped, she ran out and she tore the cotonut parsim, the cloak she was wearing. And the cloak she was wearing is described as a cotonut parsim, which in Hebrew is the same expression used for the coat of many colors, cotonut parsim that Joseph received. Now that explains it as a special type of uniform worn by the royal family. It denoted royalty. So too the cotonut parsim given to Joseph also denoted royalty. As if by Jacob giving this cotonut parsim to Joseph, he was acknowledging Joseph as the head of all of the tribes. So that was one of the reasons why the brothers were. It exacerbated, it heightened the resentment that they had against him. And then we are told the brothers had a grudge against Joseph. He provoked them. They especially the sons of Leah. Remember, there were 6 sons of Leah. Okay, 6 sons of Leah. And the other 3 wives had 2 sons each. And the commentary, Tava Kabbalah of Rabbi Yaakov Tzvi Mecklenburg, 1785-1835, he shows that the ones who made the plans against Joseph, they were the sons of Leah. The sons of the other tribes, of the handmaidens, were not in the plot, because it says they were with Joseph. So they were not in the plot, but the sons of Leah were. And they seized hold of Joseph, and they sold him as a slave into Egypt. And after a time of tribulation, he became the virtual ruler of Egypt, of the nation of Egypt. And in Egypt, Joseph helped save the country and all the nations around from famine. Eventually, he met his brothers who came to Egypt to buy grain. They were reconciled. They were reconciled and induced to bring their father and all their families to settle in Egypt, where they increased and multiplied. So the Bible tells us in Genesis 37:2, Genesis 37:2, it says, these are the records of the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. Brought back a bad report about them to their father. So he was saying bad things about them. Not only was he making himself king over them as they saw it, having these strange dreams, and his father even recognizing them, but he's also bringing a bad report about them. And this bad report in Hebrew is Dibat Amara. Dibat Amara connotes not only was it a bad report, Dibat Amara, but it was a mistaken report. It was bad in the sense that it was not correct. It was mistaken. In other words, he told mistaken things. He thought they were true. Undoubtedly, he thought they were true, but he said them. And so not only is he having these dreams, delusions of grandeur in their eyes at their expense, he's also telling lies about them, saying things that were not correct about them. So of course they resented him. And also they had children, they had obligations, they had a stake in their father's possessions. They were afraid that he might disinherit them. So therefore they considered him someone who was seeking their demise. And they judged him as liable to be put to death. But at the last minute, Judah induced them to change the decree and sell him into servitude, which is what happened. Now, later on, Joseph acknowledged that they were correct to some degree in what they had done. He went after they came down to Egypt and they became reconciled to Joseph. And then their father and all their kinfolk, they all came down to Egypt and settled in the land of Goshen. And their father passed away, and the brothers were afraid that now that their father was passed away, Joseph would be angry with them, would take revenge upon them. And so they went and they asked him to not to do that, to reconsider, to be considerate towards them. And Joseph said, you thought it for evil, God thought it for good. That, in other words, they too made a mistake about Joseph, but God did not impute guilt against them. Therefore, they were not guilty. That is how the Hebrew can be understood, and it's worth noting. We also should note another point concerning Joseph. Joseph is described as a nar. he is in Hebrew an apprentice. Okay. It says 37:2, these are the records of the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. And it says, turn it reading of this says, these are the happenings of Jacob. Joseph, when 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers as an apprentice. The sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah. It says as an apprentice. And an apprentice in Hebrew is nar, meaning young man or assistant. So to Joshua, the servant of Moshe, is also described as a nar, an assistant. See Exodus 33:11. Translated as young man, but in Hebrew nar, meaning an apprentice. And Rabbi Mecklenburg, in his commentary, says nar is not only a station that he held at that time, but it was an appointment in life and something of his characteristics at that time. We also find the same expression used in Gehazi, an assistant of Elisha. You had Elijah, and then after Elisha you had Elisha, and Elisha had a famous servant, Gehazi, who helped him, and he figures in several of the stories concerning Elisha, the prophet Elisha. See 2 Kings chapter 4. And this expression na, meaning apprentice or assistant, is also used for Gehazi, as it was used for Joshua, and as it was used for Joseph. Because Joseph had conducted himself with humility and self-effacement in serving the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, even though they were the offspring of handmaidens. That is, the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, they were the sons of handmaidens. So at a lower level, a lower station, a lower status, one could say, than he as the son of Jacob and Rachel, and his brothers are sons of Jacob and Leah. They were the sons of handmaidens. But even so, he served as their apprentice, as a nar to them. He had humility and self-effacement. And so this is a point worth noting. This was an aspect of Joseph. Joseph had humility. And we are told as mentioned, as Rabbi Mecklenburg mentions in Proverbs 22:4, that wealth and honor come as a result of humility. People who are humble are able to achieve wealth and honor. Humility is a prerequisite for honor. See Proverbs 15:33. 15:33 it says, Proverbs, the fear of the Lord is the instruction for wisdom, and before honor comes humility. So too Proverbs 22:4. The reward of humility and the fear of the Lord are riches, honor, and life. And we should follow in the steps of Joseph and have humility. And through Joseph, we can learn the way back, to learn to reconnect to the tribes of Israel, all the tribes of Israel, and bring about unification. We should note that Rabbi Avraham Feld mentioned on this that Ephraim means people who, members of lost 10 tribes who believe they descend from Israel. They should also learn humility from Joseph, just as the forefather Joseph was humble. And that is what enabled him to become who he was. So should we all follow that example. So that is what we have. Anyone, any questions or comments? Very briefly, please, and then we'll close up. Go ahead. No, we're glad we have someone speak. Go ahead.
Okay, I just have one question again.
Just a second, Sharon. Where are you from?
Do what?
Where are you from? Where do you live?
Oh, South Carolina
South Carolina. Okay, very good.
in America. But
Okay, also Steve Matt lives in South Carolina as well.
right, Mr. Matthew,
Okay.
right, and his wife.
Okay.
But I have a question. This is really bugging me now because my ancestors, well, 4 generations back, on my father's side, they were conversos. And now with my grandmother, his mother, she was from Finland, and a lot of my ancestors are in Sweden. Like I don't know. And I'm just a little confused. I guess Hashem will have to figure or help me figure that out.
Well,
But
no, both, God was in Sweden, but also in Finland. As a minority, a lot of Swedish people, a lot of the Swedes descend a lot of the Finnish people descend from Swedes.
wow.
They're intermixed very, very much, and portions of God also settled in Finland, even though the majority of the Finns, we identify them with the tribe of Issachar.
I have one question on concerning Joseph. So when did he, because in the beginning of his life with his brothers, he didn't seem very humble, so when did his humility start to really take shape?
Oh, so that's the point of the Hebrew text. He didn't seem very humble. He didn't seem very humble. He had the dreams. The
Right.
dreams, real dreams. And he told the dreams as he saw them. So because the dreams indicated that he would become very great, elevated above all the rest of his family, so you could say usually someone dreams something that they've been thinking in that direction. What they think during the day is what they dream at night. Yeah, so they suspected him of having delusions of grandeur, of wanting to lord it over him. But we learn from the story that actually these dreams were prophetic. They had prophetic significance. So he must have been had very high qualities from the very beginning. And the commentator wanted to point out, because it describes him as Na, as if that was something of his essence, that he made himself like an apprentice, like a secondary assistant when he was working with his brothers, even though his brothers were at a lower, should have had a lower status than him, they were older than him. So he paid them respect and he made himself subservient to them. He had the aspect of humility. So that's what we wanted to hear.
So do you think the reports he was bringing back to Yaakov, maybe they were kind of getting mixed in with the dreams he was having, and like they had an impression on him? And so it wasn't like a Lashon Hara, but it was more like, because isn't Lashon Hara like if you bring a false report against somebody, that's death, isn't it? I mean, if it causes them to die, then
So
when
I
you
don't know.
falsely
It
accuse.
doesn't give details of what he suspected them of doing. Hints here and there, but it doesn't give details. It doesn't say especially what he suspected them of doing. But he suspected wrongly. Dibat Amalah. His suspicions were mistaken, even though he was, as we saw, at a high level. He was like a prophet. But he made a mistake. He mistook their intentions. He mistook what they were doing for something else. And he took his mistaken impression and presented it to their father. And that was, in addition to everything else, that exacerbated their feeling of feeling threatened by him. So
Joseph represents the like Leah and her sons, or Leah, she represents the Geula, right? And Rachel and Joseph represents where we're at right now, right before Mashiach comes. So
that's a good
there's
point.
a lot in that.
So that we can also take that to heart. Yeah.
Okay.
So You want to say something, Steve?
Yeah, Sharon, I just want to put my 2 cents worth about it, the pride concerning Joseph. You want to remember that when Joseph had this dream, it was an hour, it was at 17 years old, but he was very, very, very gifted. So we got to be careful not to side with all his brothers who resented him because, one, he was gifted. His father sent him out to the boys, so they check on the boys, see what they're doing. So they didn't like that. Of course, his father, Jacob, sent him because very gifted and trustable. He was trusted that he's going to say the right things, observe the right things, bring back the right report. So it's not a matter of pride here at all. There's nothing pride here about him. There's no indication about him that he was a proud person in Egypt. He had his office, mind you, better obey him. Pharaoh says so. All right. But there's
Right, I
no
didn't
pride
see him being
anywhere.
prideful.
Anywhere. Zero. The pride of Ephraim is a prophetic, is a prophecy that down the road, way, way after his long death, when they will have come into the blessings of the firstborn, because he was a firstborn, this will run away with them. And they would have this pride as about their strength that the Almighty has given and all the blessings. And it's going to have its negative fruits about it. And that's what the Almighty complains about in the prophets, that he will break the pride of his power. And it's nothing to do with Joseph, the person way back then. So rest assured, there's no Lashon Hara, nothing over there in his youth and while he was alive. It's absolutely nothing to do with it. He was a
Right.
humble person to be trusted in the house of Potiphar, in the prisons and everything else. So we'll
Right,
talk
I
about
just
that
wondered
later
about
on.
that.
The
We'll
inside
talk
of your
about that
jacket,
later on.
Steve,
Yes.
inside of your jacket, the continent passing. Continent passing. Show everyone. The inside of your jacket.
Oh,
It has a tartan color.
oh,
No, the
oh,
other
this
side.
one.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're tartan.
You see it? A cock of many colors. Continent passing.
Yeah. So I want to say something, Sharon, about that. I hear you're very, very concerned about tribe. We don't quite know exactly where we belong. The prophecies indicate that when Mashiach comes, we will be told exactly where we belong.